Let me ask you something before I begin. Have you ever stood in the middle of your own life, holding your sick child against your chest, feeling her tiny body burn with fever, and realized you were completely alone? Not alone, like nobody's home. Alone, like the one person who swore before God and your family to stand beside you, to protect you, to love you through sickness and health, through better and worse. That person looked you dead in the eye and said, "Not my problem, figure it out." Pause, because that's exactly what happened to me. My name is Clara, and the story I'm about to tell you changed everything. It destroyed me first. Then it rebuilt me into something my husband never saw coming, something he never imagined I could become. Something that made him call me 65 times in a single day while I sat in silence, watching his name flash across my screen, and I smiled. But I need you to hear the whole thing, from the very beginning. Because the beginning, that's where the cracks started, and the end. The end is where everything he ever built came crashing down around him like a house of cards in a hurricane. So settle in, turn the volume up. And whatever you do, don't skip ahead. This story earns its ending. It was a Tuesday, October 14th. I remember the date because I had been counting down the days until my daughter Lily's third birthday, which was that Saturday. I had ordered a cake shaped like a butterfly. I had bought streamers in purple and pink. I had invited 12 children from her little play group. Everything was supposed to be perfect. But Tuesday night, nothing was perfect. I was in the kitchen washing the last of the dinner dishes. My husband Marcus was in the living room watching a basketball game with the volume so loud the walls were practically vibrating. He hadn't said more than 6 words to me since he got home from work. That wasn't unusual. Over the past year, Marcus had become a stranger who slept in my bed, a roommate who shared my last name, a ghost who ate the meals I cooked and never once said thank you. I had learned to live with it. I had learned to shrink myself small enough to fit inside the cracks of his indifference. I told myself it was just a phase. I told myself that all marriages go through seasons. I told myself that if I just loved harder, cooked better, smiled wider, maybe he would come back to me. Maybe the man who once drove 45 minutes in the rain just to bring me soup when I had a cold would resurface. But that man was gone. And in his place was someone cold. Someone dismissive. Someone who looked at me like I was furniture. I dried my hands on the dish towel and walked down the hallway to check on Lily. She had been fussy during dinner, barely touching her chicken nuggets, which was unusual because that child loved chicken nuggets more than anything on this earth. I figured she was just tired. But when I opened her bedroom door and walked to her toddler bed, my heart stopped. Her face was flushed red, not pink, red, like someone had painted her cheeks with fire. I pressed the back of my hand to her forehead and yanked it away like I had touched a stove. She was burning, not warm, not a little feverish. Burning. "Lily, baby, Mama's here," she whimpered. Her eyes were glassy and unfocused. She was trembling, not shivering, trembling. Like her little body was fighting something it couldn't beat on its own. I scooped her up and she was limp in my arms. 3-year-olds are not limp. 3-year-olds are squirming and kicking and giggling and demanding to be put down. But Lily just hung against my chest like a rag doll, and her breathing was shallow and fast. I ran to the bathroom and grabbed the thermometer. I placed it under her arm and waited, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. When it beeped, I looked at the number and my blood ran cold. 104.7. Almost 105 degrees. I knew that number. Every mother knows that number. That number means you don't wait. You don't try Tylenol in a cool bath and see what happens. That number means you get in the car and you drive to the emergency room and you pray the whole way there. I grabbed a blanket, wrapped Lily in it, snatched my purse off the counter and ran to the garage. I clicked the unlock button on my key fob and jumped into the driver's seat of my old Honda Civic. The car was 12 years old. I had been asking Marcus for months to take it to the mechanic because it had been making a grinding sound every time I turned the engine over. He always said the same thing. "It's fine, you're being dramatic." I turned the key, nothing. I turned it again, a clicking sound. Then silence. Again. Click, 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 nothing. The car was dead. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Lily whimpered against my shoulder, her tiny fist clutching my shirt. I looked at the clock on the dashboard, 9:47 at night. The nearest hospital was 22 minutes away. I didn't have Uber on my phone because Marcus said it was a waste of money. My mother lived 45 minutes in the other direction. My only friend close by, Rachel, had told me earlier that day she was visiting her sister 2 hours north. There was only one option. I carried Lily back into the house, walked into the living room, and stood in front of the television. Marcus didn't even look up. He leaned to the side to see around me. Move, Clara, it's the fourth quarter. Marcus, Lily has a fever of almost 105. The car won't start. I need you to drive us to the emergency room right now. He finally looked at me. But there was no alarm in his eyes, no concern, no urgency. He looked at me the way you look at a fly buzzing around your food, annoyed, inconvenienced. Give her some Tylenol and put a cold rag on her head. She'll be fine. She will not be fine. 105 degrees can cause seizures. It can cause brain damage. She needs to see a doctor tonight. Right now, Marcus, please. I heard my own voice crack on that last word. Please. How many times had I said that word to this man? How many times had I begged him for the bare minimum? Please talk to me. Please come to bed. Please look at me. Please love me. Please help me. Please. He picked up his beer, took a long sip, set it down, and then he said the words that I will carry with me until the day I die. The words that change the entire trajectory of my life. Not my problem. Figure it out. Pause. I stood there for exactly 3 seconds. I know because I counted them. 1, 2, 3. In those 3 seconds, something inside me shifted. It wasn't a break. Breaking implies you fall apart. This was something else entirely. This was a tectonic plate moving deep beneath the surface, silent, invisible, but powerful enough to reshape the entire landscape. I looked at him. I looked at this man I had married 5 years ago. This man I had supported through his business failures, his bad investments, his temper, his selfishness. This man I had given my youth, my body, my identity to. This man who couldn't be bothered to drive his own daughter to the hospital. And I said very quietly, very calmly, in a voice so steady it surprised even me, "Okay, fine." Then I turned around. I walked out of the living room. I carried my burning daughter to the kitchen and I called 911. I told them my child had a dangerous fever. I had no transportation and I needed an ambulance. They said they'd be there in 12 minutes. Those 12 minutes were the longest of my life. I sat on the kitchen floor with Lily in my lap, pressing a cool, wet cloth to her forehead, singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star through tears I refused to let fall. I could hear the basketball game blaring in the next room. I could hear Marcus cheering at a play. His daughter was potentially dying in the next room, and he was cheering at a basketball game. The paramedics arrived. They took her temperature again, 105.1. It had gone up. They loaded her onto a tiny stretcher and I climbed into the back of the ambulance. As we pulled away, I looked through the small window at my house. The living room light was still on. The television was still flickering. He never even came to the door. At the hospital, they ran tests: blood work, urine, a chest x-ray. The doctor told me Lily had a severe urinary tract infection that had gone septic, sepsis, in a 3-year-old. If I had waited even another 2 hours, the doctor said, looking me straight in the eyes with a gravity I will never forget, it could have been fatal. Fatal. Monitoring. She was hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed and flashed numbers I didn't understand. I sat in a plastic chair beside her bed and held her tiny hand and I watched her sleep and I made a decision. I made the most important decision I have ever made in my life. I decided that Tuesday, October 14th, was the last day I would ever be helpless, the last day I would ever beg, the last day I would ever need Marcus for anything, the last day Clara the doormat existed, because a new Clara was being born. Right there in that hospital room, under those fluorescent lights, to the rhythm of her daughter's heart monitor. And that new Clara, she was going to be strategic, patient, brilliant, and absolutely, devastatingly merciless. Lily spent 3 days in the hospital. Marcus visited once. He came on the second day, stood in the doorway for about 15 minutes, looked at his phone the entire time, and said, "See, she's fine. I told you she'd be fine." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just smiled and said, "You're right. She's going to be just fine." He had no idea what that smile meant. When Lily was discharged, I brought her home. Marcus was watching television, different game, same indifference. I carried my daughter to her room, tucked her in, kissed her forehead, which was now blessedly cool, and then I went to my own bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed. I did not cry. I opened my laptop, and I began to plan. See, here's the thing about Marcus that he never expected me to figure out. He underestimated me. He had always underestimated me, from the very beginning. When we met, I was 22 and he was 31. I was a college dropout working as a receptionist at a real estate firm. He was a successful property investor with a flashy car and a confident smile. He swept me off my feet, not because I was stupid, but because I was young and hopeful and desperate to be loved by someone who seemed like they had their life together. What I didn't know then was that Marcus's success was built on a foundation of manipulation and control. He didn't want a partner. He wanted an audience. Someone to admire him, someone to serve him, someone who would never question, never challenge, never threaten his carefully constructed ego. He convinced me to quit my job after we got married. "I make enough money," he said. "You should stay home, take care of the house. That's what good wives do." And because I loved him, because I trusted him, because I thought this was what marriage was, I agreed. I let my world shrink down to the size of our 4-bedroom house. I let my identity dissolve into the words Marcus's wife. For 5 years, I had no income, no savings, no credit in my own name, no friends he hadn't approved of, no family gatherings he hadn't controlled. He isolated me so slowly, so methodically, that I didn't even realize it was happening until I was standing in a kitchen at 9:47 on a Tuesday night with a dying child in my arms and no way to get to a hospital. But here's what Marcus didn't know about me. Before I dropped out of college, I was studying business administration with a minor in accounting. I left because I ran out of money, not because I lacked the ability. I understood numbers, I understood systems, I understood how money moved and where it hid. And more importantly, I understood that Marcus had gotten sloppy. Over the past 5 years, I had watched, quietly, invisibly. While he thought I was just folding laundry and loading the dishwasher, I was observing. I noticed the late-night phone calls he took in the garage. I noticed the documents he carelessly left on the home office printer. I noticed the passwords he used for everything because he was arrogant enough to use the same one for every single account. His mother's maiden name followed by his birth year, Morrison 1985, he never changed it. He never thought he needed to, because who was going to check? His quiet, obedient, powerless wife? That first night home from the hospital, I logged into everything. His bank accounts, his investment portfolios, his email, his business records. And what I found made my blood run cold and hot at the same time. First, the money. Marcus had always told me we were comfortable but not wealthy. He gave me a household allowance of $600 a month for groceries, Lily's needs, and anything else. If I needed more, I had to ask. And he always made me explain why. But the truth, Marcus had over $2.3 million spread across 4 different accounts. 2 of them were offshore. He had been funneling money from his real estate deals into hidden accounts for years. Money that, as his legal spouse, I was entitled to. Money he had hidden specifically so that if I ever tried to leave, I would have nothing. Second, the properties. Marcus owned 7 rental properties, all generating income. 3 of them were in his name only, but 4 of them had been purchased during our marriage using marital funds, which meant they were legally marital assets. He had a property management company running them. The monthly income from those rentals alone was over $12,000. $12,000 a month, and I was budgeting whether I could afford both diapers and fresh vegetables in the same week. Third, and this one nearly knocked me off my chair, his emails. Hundreds of emails with a woman named Vanessa, going back over 2 years. I won't share the details of those emails because they were vile and degrading, and they described things I would rather bleach from my memory, but I will tell you this. In one of those emails dated 3 months before that terrible Tuesday night, Marcus wrote to Vanessa, "Don't worry, babe. I'm working on getting her out. She's got nothing, no money, no skills, no options. She'll take whatever deal I give her and disappear." He was planning to leave me. He was planning to toss me out with nothing. He was going to discard me like I was a piece of clothing he'd outgrown. And he was going to keep everything, the money, the properties, and based on one particular email thread with a lawyer friend of his, he was even going to try for primary custody of Lily. Not because he loved Lily, not because he wanted to be a father, but because he knew taking Lily away from me was the ultimate power move, the ultimate punishment for the crime of being a burden he no longer wanted. I sat in my bedroom that night and I read every single email, every document, every bank statement, every text message he had backed up to the cloud. I read it all, and when I was done, I did something that might surprise you. I closed the laptop. I went to the bathroom. I washed my face. I brushed my teeth. I got into bed next to my husband, who was already snoring, and I stared at the ceiling. And I felt calm. Not angry calm. Not suppressed rage. Genuinely calm. Because for the first time in 5 years, I didn't feel powerless. I had information. And information is the most dangerous weapon in the world when it's in the hands of someone who has been underestimated. I didn't rush. That's important. I didn't react emotionally. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry or scream or throw things. I didn't pack a bag in the middle of the night. Any of those reactions would have given him the upper hand. He would have painted me as hysterical, unstable, crazy, and he would have used it against me. Instead, I became the most patient, strategic, deliberate version of myself that has ever existed. Operation 65 calls had begun. He just didn't know it yet. The next morning, I made Marcus his favorite breakfast: bacon, scrambled eggs with cheddar cheese, toast with strawberry jam, and fresh squeezed orange juice. He looked at me with mild suspicion because I hadn't made him breakfast in months. "What's this for?" he asked. "Nothing," I said with a warm smile. "I just realized I've been so stressed lately, I forgot to appreciate what I have. I'm sorry. I want to do better." He grunted, shoved a piece of bacon in his mouth, and went back to his phone. Texting Vanessa, no doubt. I didn't care. Let him text. Let him plan. Let him plan. Let him think he had me exactly where he wanted me. Because the first phase of my plan was already in motion. I had woken up at 5 that morning and called my mother. We had been distant for years, mostly because Marcus had systematically driven a wedge between us. He complained every time she visited. He made snide comments about her cooking, her appearance, her opinions. Eventually, she stopped coming. Eventually, I stopped calling. It was easier than dealing with his anger, but that morning I called her. And when she answered, groggy and confused, I said 4 words I should have said years ago. "Mama, I need help." She didn't ask questions. She didn't say, "I told you so." She simply said, "What do you need, baby?" I told her everything. The hospital, the refusal, the hidden money, the affair, the plan to discard me. And then I told her what I was going to do. There was a long silence. Then my mother, the 63-year-old woman who had raised 4 children on a nurse's salary and never once complained, said something that became my North Star for the next 3 months. "Take your time, Clara. Revenge is a dish best served with documentation." I almost laughed, almost. Over the next several weeks, I became two people. On the outside, I was Clara, the dutiful wife. Cooking, cleaning, smiling, agreeing. I even started being more physically affectionate with Marcus, which disgusted me to my core but served an essential purpose. It kept him comfortable. It kept him unsuspecting. It kept him sloppy. On the inside, I was a machine. I made copies of every financial document I could find: bank statements, tax returns, property deeds, business contracts. I downloaded his email correspondence and saved it to a secure cloud account that only I could access. I took screenshots of his text messages with Vanessa. I photographed the contents of his home office safe, which he thought was locked, but which I had figured out the combination to months ago by watching his fingers in the reflection of the glass photo frame on his desk. Then I found a lawyer, not just any lawyer. I found the most ruthless, brilliant, shark-blooded family attorney in the city. Her name was Patricia Whitmore. She was 61 years old. She had never lost a custody case, and she had a reputation for dismantling wealthy, controlling husbands with surgical precision. Our first meeting was at a coffee shop 30 minutes from my house. I brought a flash drive containing every piece of evidence I had gathered. Patricia put on her reading glasses, plugged the drive into her laptop, and spent 45 minutes scrolling through files without saying a word. When she finished, she closed the laptop, took off her glasses, and looked at me. He's been hiding assets, committing tax fraud on the offshore accounts, and he has documented evidence of an extramarital affair that he was foolish enough to put in writing. Mrs. Grant, your husband hasn't just given you a divorce case. He's handed you a nuclear warhead. I felt my heart beating so hard I could see my blouse moving. What do? I asked. Patricia smiled. And it was the kind of smile that made you understand why powerful men feared this woman. You do exactly what I tell you, and you don't deviate by a single inch. So that's what I did. Patricia's plan was meticulous. She told me that before I filed for divorce, we needed to establish several things. First, we needed to document the pattern of emotional abuse and neglect. She had me start keeping a daily journal, time-stamped and detailed, of every interaction with Marcus. Every dismissive comment, every refusal, every time he prioritized himself over his daughter, every cold word, every absent night. Second, we needed to protect the assets before Marcus could move them. Patricia brought in a forensic accountant named David, a quiet man with glasses and an extraordinary talent for tracing money through shell companies and offshore accounts. David found that Marcus had been routing income through a company called Pinnacle Holdings LLC, which was registered to a P.O. box in Delaware. The company had no employees, no products, no services. It existed solely to funnel money away from our marital estate. David also discovered something Marcus clearly never expected anyone to find. He had taken out a second mortgage on our family home without my knowledge or consent. In our state, that required either my signature or a forged document. Marcus had forged my signature. David found the original document, Dobrodev 2. The signature wasn't even close to mine. That was a felony. Third, Patricia said we needed to establish my independence before filing. She helped me open a bank account in my maiden name. My mother deposited $5,000 into it, money she had been saving for years. For a rainy day, she said, "Baby, it's pouring." I also quietly enrolled in an online business course through the local community college. I studied at night after Marcus fell asleep. My laptop screen dimmed to its lowest setting, blankets pulled up around me to hide the glow. I was getting educated. I was rebuilding myself, one lesson at a time, one secret at a time, and Marcus noticed nothing, absolutely nothing, because he never paid attention to me. I was invisible to him, and for the first time in my life, that invisibility was my greatest weapon. During this time, I also did something that required every ounce of self-control I possessed. I befriended Vanessa. I know. Just hear me out. I found Vanessa's social media through Marcus's emails. She was 26, worked at a boutique clothing store, and had no idea I existed. Marcus had told her he was divorced. He told her he was a single father who had primary custody of his daughter. He told her his ex-wife had been abusive and unstable and had abandoned the family. Vanessa believed every word. I didn't approach her as Marcus's wife. I created a new social media profile under a fake name, Sarah Mitchell, and I started engaging with Vanessa's posts. Commenting, liking, eventually direct messaging. We bonded over our love of cooking and true crime podcasts. We became online friends, and over the course of several weeks, I carefully, gently, strategically guided our conversations toward the topic of relationships. Vanessa eventually opened up about her amazing boyfriend who was divorced with a daughter. She shared details. Restaurants they went to, gifts he bought her, trips he promised. She shared screenshots of his text messages, romantic ones that made my stomach turn but that I saved and forwarded to Patricia. Vanessa was not my enemy. She was another woman being manipulated by the same man, and when the time came, she would learn the truth. But not yet. Not yet. 3 months. That's how long I spent in preparation. 91 days of being two people. 91 days of smiling at a man I had come to despise while building a case that would destroy his life. 91 days of quiet, calculated, methodical work. And then, on a Monday morning in January, everything was ready. Patricia filed the divorce papers. But she didn't just file them. She filed them alongside a motion to freeze all of Marcus's known assets pending investigation of hidden marital property. She filed a request for emergency temporary custody of Lily based on documented neglect, including the hospital incident supported by medical records, the ambulance report, and my detailed journal. She filed a report with the IRS regarding Marcus's offshore accounts and tax evasion. And she filed a separate complaint with the county district attorney's office regarding the forged mortgage document. All of it, all at once. Like a symphony of consequences perfectly orchestrated to hit every note at the same time. Marcus was served at his office, in front of his employees, in front of his business partners. A process server walked in at 11 in the morning on a Tuesday, handed him a thick envelope and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Marcus Grant, you've been served." He called me immediately. I didn't answer. He called again. I didn't answer. He called 5 more times in 10 minutes. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Clara, what the hell is this? Call me back right now." I didn't call back. He drove home. Broke multiple traffic laws doing it, I later learned. He burst through the front door and found the house quiet. Lily's room was empty. My closet was empty. The bathroom was cleared of all my products. Lily's toys were gone. Her car seat was gone. Her butterfly birthday decorations, which I had kept in a box in the garage, were gone. We were at my mother's house, 45 minutes away, safe, settled, and completely beyond his reach. He called again and again and again. By the end of that first day, Marcus had called me 65 times. 65. I know because I counted every single one. I sat in my mother's living room with Lily sleeping peacefully on the couch beside me, a blanket tucked around her little body, and I watched my phone light up over and over and over again with his name, and I smiled, not a cruel smile, not a vindictive smile, a peaceful one. A peaceful one. The smile of a woman who had finally taken back control of her own life. I answered on call number 66. "Hello, Marcus. Clara, where the hell are you? Where's Lily? What is this divorce paperwork? What's going on? You need to come home right now. We can talk about this." "Whatever you think you know, I know everything." Silence. "I know about the $2.3 million. I know about Pinnacle Holdings. I know about the offshore accounts. I know about Vanessa. I know about the forged mortgage. I know about the emails where you plan to throw me out with nothing and take my daughter." Longer silence. "I also know that as of this morning, all of your accounts are frozen. Your properties are flagged. The IRS has opened an investigation. The district attorney has a copy of the forged document. And my lawyer, Patricia Whitmore, maybe you've heard of her, has filed for emergency custody, which, given the documented evidence of your neglect during our daughter's medical emergency, she is extremely confident we will receive." I could hear him breathing, heavy, ragged, like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him was not ground at all but a trapdoor. "Clara, baby, listen to me. Let's not be hasty. I love you. I love Lily. We can work this." "Marcus? Yeah? Not my problem. Figure it out." I hung up. And I swear to you, it was the most satisfying moment of my entire life. What happened next was a cascading disaster for Marcus Grant, and I watched every single moment of it with clear eyes and a steady heart. The asset freeze hit him first. Because all of his accounts were frozen pending the divorce investigation, he couldn't access any of his money. Not the checking account, not the savings, not the hidden accounts David had uncovered. He couldn't make mortgage payments on the rental properties. He couldn't pay his business expenses. He couldn't even fill up his gas tank. He called his lawyer a drinking buddy named Rick who mostly handled real estate closings and had no business handling a high-conflict divorce. Rick told Marcus not to worry, that the freeze was temporary and they could get it lifted at the hearing. Rick was wrong. At the first hearing, Patricia presented David's forensic accounting report. 47 pages documenting hidden assets, shell companies, fraudulent transfers, and tax evasion. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Catherine Rivera, read through the report with an expression that grew progressively more severe with each page. She did not lift the freeze, she expanded it. She also granted me temporary custody of Lily, citing the medical records from the hospital, the ambulance report, and my journal documenting Marcus's pattern of neglect. Marcus was granted supervised visitation only. He stood in that courtroom looking like a man who had just watched his house catch fire and realized he had no insurance. His face was gray, his hands were shaking, his buddy Rick was sweating through his dress shirt. But it got worse for Marcus, much worse. The IRS investigation proceeded rapidly because David had handed them the entire financial trail on a silver platter. They determined that Marcus owed over $400,000 in unpaid taxes on the hidden income. With penalties and interest, the total climbed to over $600,000. They placed a federal tax lien on every property in his name. Then the district attorney pressed charges for the forged mortgage document, forgery, fraud, a felony in our state carrying up to 5 years in prison. Marcus hired a criminal defense attorney, a good one, expensive. But with his assets frozen, he had to borrow money from his elderly mother to pay the retainer. His mother, a sweet woman named Dorothy, who had always been kind to me and adored Lily, was devastated. She called me crying, not to beg me to take Marcus back, but to apologize. "I didn't raise him to be this way, Clara," she sobbed. "I am so sorry. I told Dorothy that I loved her, that she would always be Lily's grandmother, and that none of this was her fault, because it wasn't." Meanwhile, Marcus's rental properties began to fall apart. Without money to maintain them, without the ability to pay his property management company, tenants started complaining. Then they started leaving. One by one, units went vacant. Revenue dried up. The properties that still had mortgages fell behind on payments. Banks sent notices, then warnings, then foreclosure proceedings. Marcus tried to sell 2 of the properties to generate cash, but he couldn't. The tax liens prevented any sale until the IRS was satisfied. He was trapped. Everything he had built, everything he had hoarded and hidden and kept from me, was being dismantled piece by piece. And Vanessa, let me tell you about Vanessa. Remember my online friendship with her? About 2 weeks after I filed for divorce, I sent Vanessa a message. But this time, it wasn't from Sarah Mitchell. It was from Clara Grant. I told her the truth, all of it. I attached copies of my marriage certificate, family photos, and screenshots of Marcus's emails where he talked about her to his friends, calling her, and I quote, "a fun distraction, nothing serious." Vanessa was destroyed. She called Marcus in a rage and he denied everything. But she had the proof. She had the receipts. She had the marriage certificate with a date that proved he was married the entire time he was telling her he was divorced. She left him that night. But she didn't just leave him. She contacted Patricia and offered to provide a deposition regarding their relationship, including gifts Marcus had purchased for her using marital funds, trips he had taken her on, and promises he had made about their future together. Her testimony further strengthened my case for asset division. Marcus was losing everything. His money, his properties, his mistress, his reputation, his freedom was under threat. And the one thing he wanted most, the one thing he thought he could use as leverage, was the one thing the court had placed firmly and irrevocably in my hands, his daughter. Now I told you there would be a twist, and this is where it comes. About 6 weeks into the divorce proceedings, I received a phone call from David, the forensic accountant. His voice had a strange quality to it, excitement mixed with disbelief. "Clara, I need you to sit down." I sat down. "While tracing Marcus's financial history, I went all the way back to before your marriage. I found something I wasn't looking for." My mouth went dry. "What?" "The house you're living in, the family home. Marcus told you he bought it before you met, correct?" "Yes. He said he purchased it in 2017. 2 years before we started dating. That's what the records appear to show. But the original purchase was made through a trust. The trust was funded by an inheritance from Marcus's grandfather. Here's the thing, Clara. The trust documents list Marcus as the trustee, but the beneficiary, the person the house actually belongs to, is listed as, quote, Marcus Grant's lawful spouse at the time of his first marriage. I blinked. What does that mean? It means the house doesn't belong to Marcus. The house belongs to you. It has belonged to you since the day you married him. His grandfather set up the trust specifically so that the family home would be protected for Marcus's wife, not for Marcus. Marcus either didn't read the trust documents carefully or assumed it didn't matter. But legally, you are the owner of that house. It was never his to mortgage, never his to leverage, and certainly never his to sign your name against. I couldn't breathe. The 4-bedroom house, the house where I had scrubbed toilets and mopped floors and cooked thousands of meals, the house where I had felt like a guest in my own life, the house where my daughter had almost died while her father watched basketball. It was mine. It had always been mine. Patricia nearly fell out of her chair when I told her. She filed an emergency motion to assert my ownership of the property and to void the fraudulent second mortgage. The judge granted it within the week. Marcus received the notification while he was staying at a motel. He had been bouncing between motels and his mother's couch since I left, unable to afford anything more. When he read the court order declaring that the family home belonged to me, something in him finally broke. He called me. This time I answered on the first ring. Clara. Clara. His voice was barely a whisper. How did you do this? How did you? I don't understand. You were just a housewife. And there it was, the core of everything. The fundamental belief that had been the foundation of his cruelty. He believed I was nothing. He believed I was small. He believed that because he controlled the money, he controlled me. He believed that a woman who stayed home and raised his child and washed his clothes and kept his world running was somehow less than him. I was never just anything, Marcus. You were just too blind to see it. He started to cry. I had never heard Marcus cry in 5 years of marriage. Not when his grandfather died. Not when his business partner betrayed him. Not once. But he was crying now. Deep, ugly, broken sobs. I felt nothing. No, that's not true. I felt something. I felt free. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Here is what the final settlement looked like, and I want you to hear every single detail because every single detail matters. I was awarded full legal and physical custody of Lily. Marcus was granted supervised visitation every other Saturday, 4 hours at a monitored facility. He had to complete a parenting course and 6 months of anger management before the supervision requirement could be reviewed. I was awarded the family home, free and clear, with the fraudulent second mortgage voided entirely. The bank that had issued the mortgage based on my forged signature was investigating their own liability. Of the $2.3 million in assets, the court determined that approximately $1.8 million constituted marital property. After accounting for Marcus's deliberate dissipation of assets, meaning the money he spent on Vanessa, the hidden accounts, the fraudulent transfers, the judge awarded me 65% of the marital assets. That was approximately $1.17 million. I was also awarded 3 of the 4 rental properties purchased during the marriage. The properties needed work, but they were mine. Revenue-generating real estate that I could manage and grow. Marcus was ordered to pay child support based on his true income, not the paltry salary he had been claiming. The monthly amount was substantial, and the criminal charges? Marcus pleaded guilty to the forgery charge in exchange for a reduced sentence. 18 months of probation, community service, restitution to the mortgage company, and a felony on his permanent record. A felony that would follow him for the rest of his life. A felony that meant he could never again work in real estate in our state. A felony that stripped him of the professional identity he had built his entire ego around. The IRS took the rest. After penalties, interest, and back taxes, Marcus owed the federal government more than he had left. His remaining assets were seized. The properties still in his name were sold at auction to satisfy the tax debt. His bank accounts were garnished. When the dust settled, Marcus Grant, The man who once had $2.3 million, 7 rental properties, a family home, a wife, a daughter, and a mistress was left with nothing. No house, no properties, no savings, no business, no license, no wife, no girlfriend, no custody, no custody. A felony record, a tax debt that would follow him for decades, and a motel room that his elderly mother was paying for with her Social Security check. He was broke, he was broken, and he was alone. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in the kitchen of my home. My home. My home. I was making dinner for Lily, who was now 3.5 and absolutely thriving. The sepsis had left no lasting damage, thank God. She was loud and silly and demanding and perfect. She was currently sitting at the kitchen table drawing a picture of a butterfly with purple and pink crayons. I had repainted the walls. I had replaced the heavy, dark curtains Marcus loved with light, airy ones that let the sunshine pour in. I had turned his home office into a playroom for Lily. I had turned the garage into a small workshop where I was teaching myself basic car maintenance because I swore I would never be stranded again. The rental properties were generating income. I had hired a reputable property management company, and the units were full. I was earning more monthly income from those 3 properties than Marcus had ever given me in his household allowance. I had completed my online business course and enrolled in a full degree program. I was studying remotely, fitting classes around Lily's schedule, and I was carrying a 3.8 GPA. My professors said I had a natural talent for business strategy. I had reconnected with my mother, my sisters, and friends I had lost during the marriage. My house was full of laughter now. Full of visitors, full of life. I had also started therapy because, as strong as I had been, as strategic and composed and relentless, the truth was that I had been deeply wounded. Marcus's neglect, his control, his contempt, those things had left scars that didn't disappear just because I won in court. Healing wasn't about revenge. Revenge was about justice. Healing was about me. My therapist helped me understand that I had spent 5 years slowly losing myself and that the process of coming back would take time. But I was patient. I had already proven that I could be patient. And Lily was the center of everything. Every morning, I woke up and looked at her sleeping face, and I thanked God for that Tuesday night. Not for the pain, not for the fear, not for the helplessness, but for the wake-up call. Because if Lily hadn't gotten sick, if the car hadn't broken down, if Marcus hadn't said those 5 horrible words, I might still be there, still invisible, still shrinking, still dying slowly in a beautiful house that belonged to me and I didn't even know it. Sometimes the worst moment of your life is actually the moment your real life begins. 1 year after the divorce, Marcus called me one last time. It was a Sunday evening. Lily was in bed. I was on the couch reading a book about real estate investing. His name appeared on my screen and I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. "Hello, Clara." His voice sounded different, smaller, emptier, like a room that used to be full of furniture and now echoed, "Marcus, I wanted to say." He paused, breathed. "I'm living in my mother's basement. I lost everything. I know that. I know I did this to myself. I know you were smarter than I ever gave you credit for. I know I was wrong. About everything, about the marriage, about you, about that night at the hospital, especially about that night." I listened. I didn't interrupt. "I think about that night every single day, Clara. I think about Lily in that ambulance. I think about the fact that I sat there watching a basketball game while my daughter was fighting for her life. I think about what could have happened, what almost happened. And I can't breathe when I think about it." His voice cracked. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. I just needed you to know that I know. I know what I did. I know what I lost. And I know it's my fault." There was a long silence between us. The kind of silence that holds entire lifetimes. "Marcus," I said finally, "I hope you mean that. Not for me, not for you, for Lily, because she deserves a father who shows up. A father who cares. A father who would drive through fire to get her to a hospital. If you can become that man, then there's still something worth saving in you. But if you can't, then stay in that basement, because I will never, ever let you hurt her again." He was quiet for a long time. "I'm going to try, Clara. Then try. I hung up. And I closed that chapter of my life. Not with anger, not with hatred, but with a boundary so firm, so clear, so unshakable that he would never mistake my kindness for weakness again. 2 years later, I owned 5 rental properties. I had completed my degree summa cum laude. I had started a small consulting business, helping other women in abusive or controlling relationships understand their financial rights. I called it Figure It Out Consulting because those were the words he said to me on the worst night of my life, and I turned them into my battle cry. The business grew faster than I ever imagined. Women reached out from everywhere, women who had been told they were nothing, women who had been hidden from their own money, women who had been manipulated into dependency. I helped them find forensic accountants. I connected them with lawyers like Patricia. I taught them how to read financial documents, how to recognize hidden assets, how to protect themselves. I was featured in a local newspaper, then a national blog, then a podcast, then a television segment. I was becoming not famous but known as the woman who turned Figure It Out into a movement. Lily started kindergarten. She was bright and brave and absolutely fearless. She had my stubbornness and, I'll admit, her father's confidence. The good kind. She didn't remember the hospital. She didn't remember the ambulance or the four or the machines. She only knew that her mama was strong and her home was safe and she was loved beyond measure. And Marcus completed his probation. He completed the parenting course. He completed anger management. He was slowly rebuilding, working a regular job, living modestly, showing up for his supervised visits. He wasn't the man I married. He wasn't the man I divorced. He was something in between, something still forming. Whether he would become better was up to him, but that was no longer my concern. My concern was the woman looking back at me in the mirror every morning, the woman who had been invisible, the woman who had been dismissed, the woman who had been told, not my problem. That woman had burned her old life down to the foundation and built an empire on the ashes. So let me ask you something now that you've heard the whole story. Have you ever been told to figure it out? Have you ever been made to feel like you were nothing? Like your voice didn't matter? Like your pain was an inconvenience? Like your entire existence was just background noise in someone else's life? Because if you have, I need you to hear me. Really hear me. You are not nothing. You have never been nothing. You have been underestimated, yes. You have been undervalued, yes. You have been overlooked and dismissed and made to feel small. But small doesn't mean weak. Small is how seeds start. And seeds, when they finally break through the soil, become the things that forests are made of. You don't need permission to take back your power. You don't need anyone's approval to protect your children, reclaim your worth, or build the life you deserve. You just need to decide. The way I decided on that hospital floor with my daughter's heart monitor beeping beside me. Decide that today is the last day you beg. The last day you shrink, the last day you accept less than you are worth, and then you plan, you prepare, you protect yourself. And when the time comes, you move with the quiet, devastating precision of a woman who has absolutely nothing left to lose and absolutely everything to fight for. Because that kind of woman, she doesn't break. And if this story moved you, if it made you feel something, if it made you think of someone who needs to hear it, share it. Send it to a friend, send it to your sister, send it to your mother, send it to every woman you know who has ever been told she wasn't enough. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Because this is what we do here. We tell the stories that need to be told. The stories of women who were counted out and came back swinging. The stories of mothers who would walk through fire for their children. The stories of revenge that isn't petty or cruel but righteous and earned and devastatingly intelligent. Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and share this story with someone who needs it today. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for another woman is remind her that she is not alone. Until next time. Stay strong, stay smart, stay dangerous, and remember, if anyone ever tells you to figure it out so well that they never recover.